WOKB, Winter Garden, Orlando.
Welcome to another edition of Real Family Talk. This is your host, Jay Real. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday night.
Hey, hello. Welcome to Real Family Talk. This is your host, Jay Real. Hope everybody's having a great Wednesday evening out there, man. We are excited, ready to go, man. We're going to have we got some guests coming in tonight, and then we're going to have a guest on the phone as well as we talk about reparations, y'all. That is the topic tonight, man. There was this great article on The Atlantic, written by a gentleman by the name of Coates. And so that kind of sparked the conversation. And so we're going to pick it up. We'll talk about what he talked about in his article and talk about the rebuttal that got written, man. But reparations is the topic tonight. So I hope y'all enjoy it. Remember, you can call in and join these discussions. 407-894-1680 is the number. 407-894-1680 is the number. Before we get there, though, let me go ahead and welcome the panel tonight. We got Jeremy's in the building. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm good. How you doing out there? Good people in Orlando, Florida, and beyond.
We got Mr. King is back in the building. Mr. King has been going for a little while. What's up, Mr. King?
Nah, I've been here, brother. I don't know what you mean, man. I'm here in the building, happy to be here.
That's awesome, man. And then our guest tonight, man, Mr. Jason Henry's in the building tonight. How you doing, Jason?
I'm fantastic, man. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, sir. Doing pretty good. Yes. So before I get there, man, just a couple quick topics, man. Of course, the finals start tomorrow. What's the predictions, fellas? What's the prediction? Is it the Heat for the third time in a row, or does San Antonio sneak one in on them?
Spurs in 7.
Spurs in 7, Jason says.
Heat in 6.
Heat in 6.
Psych. I hope it's the Heat, but I think it's going to be the Spurs.
You think it's going to be the Spurs? Mr. King, what you got to say, Mr. King?
From what the brothers at the Conspiracy Theory Lounge have told me, the big four are going to retire. You got Tim that's going to retire, Popovich, Ginobili, and Tony Parker. And with the storyline that they've had this year, being the coach of the year and all the, not old enough, too old to be doing it, I think they're going to win their last ring and go out on top with a bang. Like they say, it's probably been the last franchise since Magic and Kareem that actually been doing it like they're doing it. So I think they're all going to retire after they beat the Heat in 7.
All right, there it is.
Good.
I think the Heat's going to win, too. I think it's going to go to Game 7.
Yeah,
but
I say Heat in 7.
I hope it's the Heat, man. I really do, but just watching it just seems like the Spurs. The Spurs are deeper, and
the bench is so much better. The storyline throughout the year, you gotta understand that the NBA is a soap opera. Once you understand how the NBA works, it's a big soap opera, and they lead up to the end of the year so you can buy the DVD from ESPN of the champions. That's how they do it. They make good money off it. It's smart.
All right, man. So we'll see, man. But it starts tomorrow night, San Antonio. We'll see who takes Game 1. Should be interesting nonetheless. So we're going to jump in. We got our caller, our guest that's going to join us tonight. I'll let you introduce him, Jason.
Well, listen, I've had the distinct honor and pleasure to interview this man a couple of times. The first couple of times it was on the Don Miller Show as we talked about legal issues. But when I was thinking about this piece and I read it, I was like, man, I really want to talk about this piece. I want to talk about reparations and some other things. The first person that jumped in my mind was Professor Armour. So good evening, Professor. How are you?
Good to be with you. Thanks for thinking of me.
No problem, sir. Absolutely no problem. Now, I know you've read the piece, and I know I've seen some of your tweets about it. But the first thing I wanted to ask is, what do you think about the entire idea of reparations for African Americans?
Yeah, reparations is a good idea. The slogan needs to go now from freedom now to reparations now. What it does is it changes the discussion. It reframes the debate. No longer are black people cast in the role of just down and out, downtrodden, woe is I, woe is us, victims who are holding out our cups or our hats for handouts and philanthropy and charity and mercy from others. Rather, we are seen as people to whom a debt is owed, that on our labor, our free labor, a nation was built. And what we need to talk about is restitution for the unjust enrichment of generations and generations of exploitation of black labor, and how if you stand up and say, I pledge allegiance to the flag, or declare yourself a Yankee Doodle dandy, or in any other way claim the red, white, and blue, what you are claiming is not only the benefits of American citizenship and nationhood, but the debts and obligations and burdens that come along with that identity as well. And so it's not about black versus white. Were your parents here benefiting, or did they come over later as immigrants? That's not the issue. The question is, are you an American? Are you benefiting from the American way of life? If you are, then you owe a debt to the people who made the American way of life possible through their free bondage and labor.
Now, what does that look like, though? What does restitution for slavery, for Jim Crow, for housing inequity, as I think it's Ta-Nehisi Coates put it in his piece, what would that look like, or what should it look like for African Americans today?
Yeah, restitution is fairly straightforward. You know, people make it more complex than it has to be. It is a Marshall Plan for the inner city. Marshall Plan is what the U.S. government did when it dedicated money to rebuilding the country's bomb during the Second World War, building their industries back up, building their economies back up. It was an all-out commitment of resources, and it worked. Those countries came back. Well, you need to do that to black folks, you know, not beyond enterprise zones, but, you know, for example, the reason I'm teaching at USC now is I was living in a ghetto. A Great Society program called A Better Chance and Upward Bound reached down in there where LeBron James is from. When he said, I'm from the inner city of Akron, I know where he's from. I'm from Park Street, right down the street from him. They reached down, took me out, and put me in Lower Merion in A Better Chance, and that gave me a chance to go to a good college and then to go on to graduate school. But that was a Great Society program, social intervention, putting resources where your mouth is, your money where your convictions are, and unless we're willing to do that as a country again and see it as a debt we're discharging and not just as a favor we're doing for some poor black people, until we get that right, we're going to continue to have the social injustice we keep suffering with.
Now, do you think that should include some type of program? Like I read a rebuttal of his piece, The Impossibility of Reparations, and it mentioned a program like affirmative action, which in my eyes, affirmative action is really ambiguous, where it doesn't necessarily have a clear strike, so to speak, where with affirmative action, it's being torn apart today, and it's, in my opinion, it's basically because, number one, it wasn't clear, and number two, exactly. I mean,
it's not doing
as the host of the show said, it's not doing anything. But how does that fit inside of? Can you consider that a portion of reparations, or does that need to be redefined as well?
Yeah, we need to think about it all from the bottom to the top. Affirmative action has primarily helped the black bourgeoisie. Let's face it, the Cosby kids, the black middle class that had the access to the educational opportunities, that have been able to put their kids in a position to avail themselves of affirmative action programs around the country. Truly disadvantaged blacks have not benefited. The only reason I benefited is because A Better Chance and Upward Bound, those Great Society programs, came basically to my rescue. But, very few poor black kids were in my position in Akron, Ohio, to be saved by a Better Chance because it was so resource-strapped. The resources were so limited. So, we have to start to rethink affirmative action in some ways, rethink merit, redefine merit. Merit should have nothing to do with test scores and standardized test scores, deal with that, but then recognize that that's just scratching the surface. What we need is to redistribute power and wealth in America. Ooh. That's how you're going to take care of social inequality and racial inequality. Unless we're willing to increase the tax rate, the marginal tax rate, in the 50s and 60s, it was up around 90%. Yeah. Now it's down around 38%, topping out. What happened? And those are some of the most prosperous years ever in the 50s and 60s. Get that marginal tax rate back up and channel the resources from it into Great Society programs and Marshall Plan kinds of programs that are going to discharge your debt to these people whose ancestors you held in bondage to build this goodwill and this great nation we call the United States, which I don't doubt is a great nation, but you should not be a nation of deadbeat dads who don't own up to your obligations and discharge your debt.
I love this guy.
Hey, I got a question for you. He's talking about the rebuttal article. Another thing that was mentioned too was the idea that if you do this, you really can't do it without including other races.
Yeah, she'll plurality.
So yeah, exactly, plurality, and you need to include other races. Like, what do you say? What is your comment to that? Like, how do you? Because we do live in a very politically correct society, and if reparations did come on the table, that is, if you're going to get it passed Congress, you're going to have to include other races because they're going to see it as some gift to black people, which they're not going to be a part of. So what is your comment to that?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's difficult. We're going to have to face that head on. You know, the fact of the matter is that, and Coates' article beautifully demonstrates this and documents it, you can quantify the contribution economically that slaves made to the American way of life, to the American social and economic order. You can quantify it, and that's what he did. Cotton, was king, queen, and the entire royal court, and built the nation's GMP, et cetera. He went through it, and he said, you can quantify this for this group of people, and you can't compare anything else to slavery. Like Toni Morrison said, take Nazi Germany, take Nazism, and spread it out over 250 years, and then you have slavery. Except for the American Indian, who was annihilated. Every time I drive across the country and look at the grand larceny that constitutes the U.S. that we all enjoy now, I think about my Indian brother. He was annihilated, genocide, and then cooped on some reservations. He and black Americans are brothers and sisters, no doubt about it. But outside of those two experiences, man, it's hard to think of any others. Go check out 12 Years a Slave and think about 200 years of that and tell me what other group has that to talk about. Absolutely. Go down to some of these prison cells that I go to. I got a brother here right now talking about this. Walk through the prison cells and see nothing but black and brown faces. Yes, some brown faces, my brown brothers and sisters, are catching hell too. But the black faces are stacked. Go down here to Skid Row in L.A. Skid Row, literally, district. You see 80% of the homeless people walking around there with no shelter over their head, black folk. So there's no race to the bottom. We're already at the bottom. When we've been at the bottom for about 250, 300 years with official laws. Dred Scott, black men don't have any rights that the U.S. has to respect. That's Dred Scott. That's constitutional law.
Why?
That's
but
about the black folk.
Why is that, though? Because if embedded within the thread of this nation is inequality towards black folk in general. So why is it that whenever we bring up even the impossibility of reparations, the article that this guy wrote, he said that there has to be some type of plurality. If you do it for black people, then you have to do it for other people. Why is it that whenever we talk about some type of restitution for black folk, even when it comes to job training programs, well, if we have to do it for them, we have to do it for Mexicans, we have to do it for Latinos. Why is it that African Americans or black folk in this nation are always viewed that way? I mean, internally, I know the answer, but why is it that whenever we talk about issues of that nature, it's always mentioned, well, I mean, look, we got rid of Jim Crow for y'all. You 40 years outside of, any type of lawful discrimination. So what else do you want us to do? Why is it that African Americans are always viewed through that prism?
Yeah, well, we have been at the vanguard of the struggle for civil rights and American rights for a whole lot of Americans. There are a lot of Americans with disabilities, senior citizens. There are all kinds of socially marginalized groups in America who can trace a lot of their progress and success to the vanguard movement that black folks have led for emancipation, equality, and freedom. And so, we're going to just continue to play that role, I think, frankly, of being among the very most downtrodden people in the nation. And therefore, our fight for liberation, our struggle for equality is going to be a tide that lifts all boats. It's going to lift a lot of other boats. The U.S. government saying to itself, damn it, first one wants freedom, then the whole damn world wants freedom, then the whole damn country wants freedom. Yeah, that's how it works. Equality and freedom are those kinds of principles that once they get out of the bag, they're hard to constrain. And black folks have been and continue to be and will continue to be for a long time to come, for the foreseeable future, in my lifetime for sure, and, and many others, I think, going to continue to be this nation's conscience, at the vanguard of this nation's struggle for making it a more decent and humane society and figuring out how to fix some of the economic and social fissures that divide us.
All right, Professor, I want to talk about another case because I can talk about reparations in this article with you all day, but I want to mention another case. It was Vergara versus California in regards to standardized testing, and I think it's about 5 or 6 students that are suing the government of California for standardized tests. How do you see that playing out, number one? And if these students are successful, do you think it may change the face of education in this nation?
Oh, yeah. Well, standardized tests have very questionable validity in light of Claude Steele's work, where he showed that a thing called stereotype vulnerability undermines the validity of any kind of standardized test when it comes to blacks and other members of stereotype groups. So I won't go into that too much now, except to say that needs to become part of our black agenda, attacking the validity of standardized tests because they don't measure merit, and making sure that that's very clear. But beyond that, what the case you're talking about out here in California was mainly getting at was it was an attack on the tenure system among teachers. Right now, teachers, after 18 months, you get tenure. After an 18-month probationary period, and they're attacking them for the difficulty it is. They find to fire a teacher once they have received tenure, and also they wanted to get rid of the last hired, first fired approach, because they say there's some excellent teachers who may have been hired later who get let go ahead of worse teachers who have more seniority. So they wanted to get rid of all of those things and saying that those kinds of protections for teachers deny students their constitutional rights to a good education in California. That was the argument they're making. And, they just finished going to trial. Now they've got to go to the fact finder. We've got to wait for a decision. But, what it is expressing is frustration. Right around the corner from me, Crenshaw High School lost its accreditation in 2005, 2006. So if you were a black kid here in South Central doing what you were supposed to do, going to school every day, earning the best grades you could, getting great grades, when you got to your senior year in 2005, the diploma from the high school that you were going to, Crenshaw High School, was worth toilet paper in the admissions process because it was coming from an unaccredited high school, right? We let that happen around here. And then we talk to those kids about personal responsibility. Then we tell them, just behave. Just do right, keep your nose to the grindstone, and you'll get ahead. And then they see what a cruel hoax it is. So, yeah, we need to do something about the educational system. I don't know that this is the answer, but, I do know there's a problem with 18-month tenure. It takes a prof about 5 to 8 years, to get tenure. And you got to write 4, 5, 6 articles, and you got to be reviewed by peers. 18 months does seem kind of short. And if you've got bad teachers in there, and disproportionately those bad teachers are getting to black kids and Latino kids.
How are unions responding to that in California?
How the parents responded to it?
No, the unions.
Oh, yeah, the unions are fighting tooth and nail against it. They've joined the suit, and they said, no, it's not unconstitutional for us to have a tenure system and for us to have the due process that we give our teachers before we fire them. Yes, it is hard to fire them, but that's because they have protections and they have tenure, and it's fair to use a seniority system, and so there's no reason to say anything is unconstitutional here, and we're denying students their constitutionally protected right to a decent education. So, yeah, they're fighting tooth and nail, and it's going to be, I'm not sure how it's going to come out. It could come out either way.
I got a question for you. You keep talking about things, the reparations should be a part of our agenda, standardized tests should be a part of our agenda. Like, who you're referring to that is kind of sponsoring this agenda? Where is it coming from? Because right now I feel like we don't really have an agenda. You just have different individuals with a lot of different ideas, but nobody's really coming together to bring about change.
Yes, we need more than ever a clear agenda because we're coming out of a 30-year period that I call the crack plague and its festering aftermath. It started around 84, and it caused more damage to the black community. This crack plague, when you look at the staggering numbers, up to 90% of young black males in some of our neighborhoods wind up in jail on probation or on parole at some point in their lives, some of these inner city neighborhoods. It's caused more damage than 1,000 Katrinas hitting 1,000 Ninth Ward. That's the crack plague and its festering aftermath for the last 30 years. And we're just coming up out of that, and we need clarity of vision, leadership, and we need a good agenda. And I'm worried that we're not going to get it. Obama's not providing it. You know, he's going to places like Morehouse and wagging his finger and lecturing those young black men who've shown personal responsibility that they have to remain personally responsible, like they need to be preached about personal responsibility from him when he doesn't do it at Ohio State and these other schools that he goes to that aren't primarily black audiences. So, you know, I'm not sure the leadership is going to come from the Obamas. It hasn't come from the black leadership over this last 30 years. They've just been locking them up. They've been devouring their own children through the laws they've been passing and supporting. So it's going to take some new ideas, some new leadership. You know, I'm trying to make the noise as I can and be as coherent and convincing as I can be. I hope that I know there's some other voices out there. Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow, is offering new paradigms, new models. But we need to, cut loose the old, flat, stale, dry stuff and move forward with a new paradigm that says, we got to focus on redistributing power and wealth and figure out how we're going to do that and come at this from a reparations now standpoint and not just a, woe is me, woe is I, help us poor little victim standpoint.
Good grief. I could talk to this professor all night, man. I'm
with
telling
you,
I
man.
love
I'm
this
with you.
dude, man.
I do have one more question for you. What about, how do you propose? Because obviously if we're going to make this our agenda, at some point we're going to have to bring in more than just us to move this forward. So how do you propose getting other people involved? Because we're going to need congressmen to help us out and push this agenda so that it gets on the floor and can get debated. So how do you propose getting other people involved as well? How do we convince them that this is as important?
Yeah, we need to be clear on what we're saying, and then we get the support of people that other people respect. Some of our entertainers, there was a day back when we were making some real progress, before we fell into the crack plague, you had people like Muhammad Ali, hooking up with Malcolm X and, changes his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali and talking racial and social justice. You've even had LeBron James, hey, throw up the hoodies, hoodies up for Trayvon. That took backbone, when a lot of other players are only thinking about their endorsements. Michael Jordan would never have done anything like that back in the day. So we need that kind of consciousness coming from our celebrities, our athletes. We need this one of those inflection points in history, one of those moments when we can make it happen again, or we can rest on our oars and let the same old crap continue to happen to us and be a nail rather than a hammer. And we just have to make our decision. Which one are we going to be, the hammer or the nail?
Professor, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Anytime I talk to you, man, I always feel like I'm smarter once the conversation is over.
Thank you, my brother.
Hey, we do thank
you.
you.
Yes,
thank
sir.
you, Professor
Yes, sir.
Armour.
Thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, anytime. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, man. Professor Armour, man, he is definitely powerful. Definitely powerful.
He is a really passionate guy, and the thing that I always like about him, no matter what topic it may be that we are discussing, he always brings energy, but you can just feel his zeal for what he's talking about. And he has so much passion for black folk. If you go look at his avatar on Twitter, and you can see the big fro with some of the gray in it and the thick beard. Yeah. I mean, seriously, he really has a love for what he's talking about, and you can hear it when he talks. And not only that, he's bringing a level of intelligence to it that lets you know, he's just not coming on and messing with you. He's actually offering something and telling you why, this needs to be put forth. So I know that this article or this mini book, whatever you want to call it, is going to be discussed for a while. I know that some people will begin to read it and look at the length and decide that it's not for them because it really is long.
It really is long.
It's long, but it's very worth it.
Powerful,
it's very much worth it.
Powerful, worth
It really
it.
is.
Read all of the rebuttals. Read all of the the points that I guess go to the negative about why it's not needed.
Right.
And some of them are so weak that as soon as you start to read it, you're like, okay, well, that strengthens why, Ta-Nehisi's piece was so strong. So, again, we can talk about this all night, man.
Yeah, we are going to talk about this. Jeremy, you've been quiet, man. What are you thinking over there, man? Call us, by the way, if join these conversations. 407-894-1680 is the number. 407-894-1680 is the number. What you got to say, Jeremy?
Well, in looking at the article, I always believe we should get reparations. But my question would be, how would it be done? And I think that the best way to do it and really have it affect, as opposed to like on Chappelle's show, just handing out checks, would be social programs. Really going in the community, really grabbing kids, and really putting them in situations where they can take a step forward, like Professor did. Like I said, they came and grabbed him. They put him in a situation where he could really better himself, and he took advantage of it. And even beyond that, just with the mindset of a lot of the youth today, not even just put them in a situation, but really transforming their mind to know that it's worth doing it. Because a lot of times, a lot of have mentality, it'll get there. Once it get a little hard for them, they want to revert back to what they know or what they feel is easier. But it really take it really takes a changing of the mind, because it's like, just because it gets hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. I mean, the other path you're going, where that's going.
And it's hard too.
That's hard too. But see, it's just funny. But a lot of them have accepted that, okay, that end is okay. Mm-hmm. Either I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go to jail. Well, it don't matter. My life ain't nothing anyway. So it's really gonna take a changing of the mind to really, like, you're worth something. Just like we encourage, they got to push to encourage the little girls. You're beautiful. You're a queen. Respect yourself. They'll respect you. We're gonna have to do the same thing to these young men. I mean, we're not telling them they're beautiful, but, ain't gonna tell them, you're worth something. You matter. You matter. You are really, whether you know it or not, your generation is really going to shape the future of this country.
Don't you have to work that from the inside out, right?
You have to.
I believe, number one, I have no problem, and I know this is going to sound really N-wordish, but I have no problem if the government says, we're going to send y'all some checks.
No, I'm not saying I have a problem with it. I just don't know how.
I get that. Yeah. The second half of that is that we have so many social problems in this country that you would have to work reparations probably for a generation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Meaning you can't just say we're going $1 trillion, we're going to pass out some money, we're going to create some new programs for the next 2 to 3 years. That's our reparations. That's going to do nothing but leave us morally bankrupt.
Right. Yeah.
Because a lot of those programs are going to run out of money. You have to fully fund these programs and money for the next generation.
Yeah. So a couple maybe.
Exactly.
Because the effects have taken down 3 or 4 generations.
Absolutely.
We can at least get 2 generations back.
We're 30 years out from the crack epidemic. 30 years. And you think about when Jim Crow ended. You think about what happened with the Black Panthers in the 70s. So if we go back and we see what happened in the 50s, we see that we lost civil rights heroes in the 60s. We saw what happened with the Black Panther movement in the 70s, crack in the 80s. Mm-hmm. You think about it, you can even point to some stuff in the 90s. The 90s is where you can say, all right, we finally can maybe stretch our arms a little bit, where you can't say that there's any lawful discrimination. And then you read this piece and you find out, well, I shouldn't say you find out, but you've at least heard about housing discrimination that's been going on forever. And it's still been going on. Right. Wells Fargo was just sued by the federal government a few years ago because of for the same thing that they were doing in the 60s. So if redlining was just outlawed in 1968 and Wells Fargo was still basically doing that as early as 2010, that lets you know that, okay, you can't just say, we're going to settle with the federal government, we're going to pay off these debts, and then, we'll just kind of quietly go back to doing what we're doing. You have to make a real investment to trying to fix some of the social ills that befall African Americans.
Mm-hmm. But therein lies too, and Mr. King, I'm surprised you're quiet over there, brother.
I'm just learning and listening.
But there lies a lot of the problem, though, because as we push for reparations, I mean, we live in a day and time where money's at the hilt. Yeah. With $17 trillion in debt. social programs have expiration dates.
Yeah, they do.
Every single one of them have expiration dates. And so that's I think that's another thing that really complicates this issue, because how do we convince a government who is already at the hilt, who's already, on the pinnacles of being bankrupt themselves, to now create a program, which I can agree that the program's needed, but create a program that is going to fundamentally almost cripple what they're already doing, because they aren't going to stop what they're currently doing to be able to allow for something new. You see what I'm saying? That aligns the problem with or the difficulty and the challenge of pushing this movement forward. I honestly believe, I think we've pretty much got everything that we're going to get. And it's really just time for us to step up as a people, because we don't have the resources that we want, but we do have a lot of resources. A bigger problem that we have is we don't use our own resources.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really the bigger strategy that we have to work on, because we'll wait another 30 years talking about reparations.
Well,
but we
honestly,
can change our current situation.
If you think we're going to get reparations in this country.
But we can change where we are if we find a way to work together for those that have, and then to come back and get those that don't. That in and of itself would hold a lot more than spending the next 20, 30 years fighting for reparations.
Well,
and I think that's the better conversation.
Is there's been a House bill on the floor presented for the last 20 years by Representative Conyers.
Right, Representative Conyers.
HB 40. Just to get a study. Just to get a study on reparations. Everybody say, nah.
What we studying for?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember when Obama was first elected, he said, everybody kept saying, oh, he's going to bring reparations back. And he was like, no. We moved past that. We're not thinking about reparations. Well, all right. Also, the second part of that is he said that his daughters probably will not participate in affirmative action.
Right.
Well, no. I mean, you can just take so many nuggets from this piece where you can say, all right, yeah, your daughters won't, because they are the daughters of, will soon be a former president of the United States.
Right.
Will not need it.
Right.
But when you compare that to the daughters of, say, George Bush, there's a lineage there.
Yeah,
They've been able to take advantage of generational.
Well,
Exactly. So with them, it's, all right, this is the first time. You are the beneficiaries of a president. But number one, the first time. You compare that to others, this is maybe their 8th, 9th, 10th time. They are still spending money from the Bush back in the 20s and the teens, where you're about to start spending money from what your daddy just did a few years ago.
Right.
So when you look at it, when you look at it from that perspective, it's like, there's still an imbalance and still unfairness. There's always going to be unfairness, but the argument that you always hear is that why African Americans, why black folk are always crying, why are they always playing the victim? Some of them do play the victim, yes, but the other side of that is, come on, man. Like, I mean, if you went through all of what we went through, you mentioned it earlier by saying that, you need to tell, little black girls that they're beautiful. You need to give, try to instill confidence in young black men. Mm-hmm. That's generational.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you didn't get it from your pops and his pops didn't get it from his pops, then where's he going to get it from?
Exactly.
He's lost it.
Exactly.
So
you're talking about an entire lost generations of African Americans.
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden it's, Y'all need to stop complaining, man. I mean, we gave y'all this. We gave y'all affirmative action. Even though we're tearing it apart.
Right.
We gave y'all the Voting Rights Act. Even though we're tearing it apart.
Go ahead.
No, I've just been saying you've been able to take advantage of these programs for the last 20 years. So now, everybody's on the same playing field.
And again, though, we'll never be on the same playing field because we're too far behind. 407-894-1680 is the number. 407-894-1680.
You're trying to run a race with two ball chains on your feet.
Exactly. as they pointed out in the article, the case for reparations, which you posted those on the Real Family Talk Facebook page, right, sir?
Yes, they are.
All right, so they're there. So you can go check them out. The link is there, but it was originally on the Atlantic newspaper website. But so you're faced with that challenge of already being behind, and then reparations will at least give you a leg. But at the end of the day, it takes work, man. It takes so much work to be able to get back up to that footing, just to even get back to the table. But again, in this country, we already know reparations not going to happen, because we're still dealing with the idea that, people don't even want to accept how slavery has affected black people over the years. We can't even talk about that. You know, it's 2014. People go, well, it's 2014. You know, slavery happened in the 1800s. Like, why are we talking about that?
That's
because they
why.
don't get that it is generational. It has affected each generation of black Americans that have existed in this country, even though it happened over a couple hundred years ago.
And that's the beauty of this particular article, because it gives you facts. This is how it affects it. Yeah. This right here. This is just one example. Exactly. This article is just one example how it affected one whole neighborhood in what everybody would pretty much consider the worst city in the country right now.
Mm-hmm. Chirac.
Right. That's what they call it, Chirac. Yeah. And this is just one neighborhood now. You just talking about one west side. We're not even going to the south side yet, because that's a whole nother thing.
Absolutely.
So, and it's just one neighborhood on the west side. You know, Chicago's a very big city. Mm-hmm. So you got pockets everywhere, you know. And it that's what I love about it. It's just like it's fact. It's like, here it is. This is it. 1, 2, 3.
And you can relate you can relate the vast majority of the crime to housing discrimination, where if you redline these neighborhoods and said they were basically too African American,
right,
that the wages were too low, that if you moved them to the white suburbs and you gave them the ability to receive mortgages, then they're going to bring our property values down. So we're going to push them in these neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And then now you're seeing the effects of what happened with that type of discrimination, where they built highways and freeways so that white people could pass through those neighborhoods to get to their homes, so that they could see, God, I'm glad I don't live over there. But because I'm going to where I need to be, but I don't want to be over here with these black folk. So if you're thinking about the crime and all the shootings and everything, they're happening in those communities because of housing discrimination. Mm-hmm. They push them all to those neighborhoods to make them as deficient as they are now. And then we keep hearing the argument, why we got all this black on black crime? Don't get me wrong, there is some fault.
Right.
There is absolutely fault there with black people and how we view each other and how we treat each other. But you can correlate that to what happened, 40, 50 years ago in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. When they purposely put us all in the same place.
I think that's one of the most powerful statements. If you read the article, there's some video clips on it, and they have the Jesuit minister. He said the thing that irritates him the most is that white people don't want to admit that we created the ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the most powerful statements in the whole thing, that somebody could actually, he has an objective view, to look back and watch and see what they did. It's like, I mean, it's right there in your face.
Right.
And the funny thing about it, now they coming back for it, because it's like,
isn't that funny how it comes full circle?
I'm tired of driving all the way out to the suburbs. Gas is $5 a gallon.
Yep.
I can't afford that now.
I want to live, work, and play
in the same place. So now we coming forward. Now we knocking these projects down.
Yep.
Now we gentrifying the neighborhood. We pushing them out. Because now that's the funny thing. Now I got my wife is from Chicago. I got family from Chicago. It's funny. She's like, they're taking Section 8 people and moving them to the suburbs. So now they out in the suburbs.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And what's going to happen to those suburbs in 20 years?
They're going to be the bad neighborhood.
Exactly. The same problems that we're having now.
And then downtown Chicago is going to be the spot to be, right around. It's just crazy.
Look, you can compare that to what's going on at Paramore right now.
Yes, you
exactly.
can.
I was just
exactly.
Look at what's happening there. You have the new soccer stadium, the Amway Arena, this new entertainment complex that the Magic's going to have with these big, huge, large, flat screens that you're going to be able to see from the freeway, and the Citrus Bowl, and now they're trying to get the NCAA College Football National Championship there. So all these people that are underemployed, unemployed, where you have the median income in Paramore around $13,000, those people are going to be pushed out, and you're going to have these yuppie neighborhoods where you go to work down the street, you go to the bar down the street, and you can take your kids to a park down the street, all while feeling safe around your own kind.
Correct.
And they're going to try to play this as it's a mix. There's diversity down here, but when you look at the type of diversity they're talking about, they're talking about income.
Right.
They're not necessarily talking about skin color. While there will be Latinos, African Americans, Asians, whites down there, their income level is going to be about the same, because you have to have some type of money
to be able to live
to live in these spots. And then all those people, you're going to see somebody do a story in about 20 years where they say, well, what happened to all those people in Paramore? Oh, they pushed them out to Baldwin Park or some other place where,
they're not going to push them to Baldwin.
No, absolutely. They pushed them out to all
that's too new. Huh?
That's a little too new. That
they pushed them to these suburban neighborhoods, and and so that they can make Paramore. And then Paramore's going to turn into a success story,
Right.
Because they're going
We
to Pine Hills.
changed it.
Yeah,
We changed it.
yeah, we changed
turned it
Paramore
around.
and then Buddy Dyer is going to be the man who had the vision, and they're going to pull 1 or 2 or 3 black folk to say, yeah, this community was this when I was there, but look at it now.
Right.
Well, look at what all the thousands of hundreds of people that we had to force out to make sure that it actually looked nice.
Right.
And
Right.
you can actually, I'll say that for Buddy Dyer, anytime you tag anybody as a racist, it's always sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
It's always hypersensitive, and it's usually an easy stance to take. Like with Donald Sterling, everyone said that he's a racist. Well, that was easy. If he comes out and says, "I don't want Magic Johnson or you bringing black guys to my games,"
That's
you hear
easy,
that
yeah.
and automatically, oh, okay, well he's a racist. All right, well. I'm not saying that Buddy Dyer is a racist. I'm just saying he may have some racist tendencies.
Right.
Because if you look at the way he's doing Paramore, go back to his inaugural speech back in, I think, 04, 06, whenever he was elected. He said, judge my tenure as mayor on the success of Paramore. And you can absolutely do that. He wasn't talking about cleaning it up
Right.
and
He was
making
talking about
he was
changing
talking
it.
changing the face of Paramore.
Yeah.
And ostensibly making it different. And that's exactly what he's doing. And you may not say, oh, like, whoa. You can't call Buddy Dyer racist because he's done it. I'm not saying he's racist. I'm just saying there's some tendencies there because he's tearing that community apart and he's not taking into account the lives of the individuals there, the history of Paramore, and anything else you want to correlate to it. But you can hear some people, even before Daisy Lynham left office some years ago, she was like, I'm tired of my community looking this way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
that's why she was okay with what they were doing in Paramore. Then she saw they moving a lot of white people in Paramore. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I see what's going on.
Right. I mean, which ultimately, that's always the goal when you hear we're going to change the community.
Right.
We change the community not by making the community better with the folks that are there. They change the community by bringing in the new folks that weren't there before. So I mean, it's history. It's history. You got to see it. Steal a line from Joe Madison. You got to hear it. Look at it with your third eye. You know what I'm saying? It's history. Every time they say that, that's what happens. They start moving the black people out. They start moving the white people in, and then 5-10 years go down the road, and wow, look what we've done. And
But see, in the part, I think that we fall into the trap of, and I know everybody says this, we fall into the trap of being reactive to things of that nature. Mm-hmm. It's really easy for us to say, what's happening in Paramore because we can actually see it. Like we can see the new stadiums being built. We can see everything that's going on there. We can see the economic redevelopment that's happening there because we have something tangible to hold on to. Whereas before, when it was maybe being discussed and maybe a lot of people weren't paying attention, we didn't necessarily have that third eye to maybe look at it that way. And now we're like, oh, okay, well, now we can see what's actually happening so we can actually call it out. All right, so we know what's going on now. So what's our plan to make sure we're involved with how that's being altered? Because it's already there.
Right.
Like, I mean, that plan is already, the ball is
the
rolling there.
contracts are signed.
Yeah, exactly. Contracts are signed. The ball is already rolling. That church is going to be moved out of the way, and that soccer stadium is going to be there. Right. So how are you going to integrate yourself or the individuals of that community to make sure that they receive some of the I guess you could say restitution of the economic development that's happening in Paramore? And we can talk about jobs all day, that we want to make sure that, when it comes to construction and some of the jobs at the new soccer stadium that,
and they probably will get some jobs.
They will, but you think about the type of jobs that they're going to receive, not necessarily to follow those residents, because if they're underemployed and they lack certain educational skills, you can only give them a certain type of job.
Right.
You can't give them something that's going to maybe pay them $50,000, $60,000 a year because they don't have educational level to attain those positions. Right. So they're going to be
day workers.
They're going to be day workers. They're going to be subjected. Yeah,
they're going to pick them up off the corner.
They're going to be subjected to those jobs, and then we're going to have absolutely. And then you're going to have complaining about that, like, well, why they getting these jobs? Why y'all? Well, what else do you expect them to receive?
Right.
What else do you expect them to receive if this is the pool they're pulling from? That's why the president of the soccer club said, absolutely, we'll give them jobs. We'll give them jobs to work concessions. We'll give them jobs to help build the stadium. But as far as everything else, I'm not sure what else we are able to give the residents of that community.
That's where, again, being proactive. Being proactive means you got to vote. And that's one of our biggest problems. We don't vote. Mm-hmm. So you got to be out there. You got to be in front. You got to vote. You got to let them know that I'm paying attention to what you're doing. I'm not just hearing it. I'm not just talking about it with my homeboy. on the corner, I'm paying attention. I'm voting. I'm representing what I think should happen. So that's number one. And we're not on a good foot for that. We saw that in the District 5 election. So we got to do better. But District 6 is coming up, so let's do better. But so you got to vote, and then two, that's when you're voting. Then you can come to the table. And that's when you can make sure like they did across the street from Amway, that at least on paper minority businesses are getting some of those contracts to organize maybe the concessions, getting some of those contracts to be a part of some of that development, that construction that's going on, so that we can at least participate. And so that's how we'll bring some of those other people in positions of control, if you will, because it's not going to be necessarily people from the neighborhood, because they may not have that education. But if we can get some of these minority businesses in the city involved, then we can bring in some of that upper management, hopefully. But again, first off, we got to come to the table. We got to vote. We got to let them know. We got to let Buddy Dye know, and all the district commissioners know that we're paying attention. Right. That's the number one step, and that's where I think we failed as a city, as a people, black people especially. We don't show up to the vote often enough to let them know we are paying attention. We got our eyes on you, Mr. Mayor Buddy Dyer. We're paying attention, sir, and that's where it starts, though. If we don't vote, we're never gonna have a seat at the table.
Good luck with that one, man. That's something they still trying to figure out. Even when Buddy was reelected back in 2011, only 15% of the electors showed up. And he's going to come up for reelection, next year? Again, I mean, you think about it, that's truly off cycle. 2015. It was 2011 when he was reelected. He'll come up for reelection again. Is it I think it's 2015. It could be 2016, but I think it's 2015. So, I mean, when you have elections of that nature, and you can even relate that to District 5, where 11 or 12% only showed up. So right. When you have that type of apathy to set in, then how do you fix that? Yeah, it's like, how do you fix that, man? It's such a tough nut to crack, because you're trying to instill in people, vote. Like, you scream, vote, vote, vote till you're blue in the face, and you're telling them why, and they're still like, it's not going to matter at the end of the day. Right. And no matter who I elect, they're all the same. Like, that's so lazy to think that way. No, they're not all the same.
They're not all the same, but they become the same because you don't show them that you would. You know what I'm saying? You got to change in order to make them change. Yep. Yeah, if you're going to be the same, if you're going to not vote, if you're going to have apathy about what they're going to do, guess what? They're going to have apathy about what you're going to do. And they're going to do what they're going to do. And so you got to change first. You can't expect them to change if you're not going to change. Go, Jeremy.
But it's again, a change, a transforming of the mind. They have to understand why it's going to affect them, how it's going to affect them. I mean, like a deep meaning. I mean, the soccer stadium is one thing, but I mean, if you take somebody, if they living in a one-bedroom apartment that's beaten down, broken down, you say, okay, we're going to kick you out and move you over here to one that's a little better. I mean, what? Okay, thank you. It's a little better, The one I was living is 100 years old. This is only 20 years old. I mean, what I got to complain about? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's why they would think that. And I mean, outside of that, now that's maybe the younger generation, not the older generation. Now, obviously, they're going to have a little more pride because they were really raised there. They saw what it once was. How vibrant a community it once was. A lot of people don't know. There's I can't remember exactly where it was, but just like most black cities back in the day, the Chitlin Circuit, there was a club down there that Ray Charles and a lot of other stars came through and performed at. But if you don't know that, if you don't care that there's a history there, it doesn't matter to you. You understand? Because what you're looking at is what's in your face right now. It's what you're affected by. But there's a history there. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. There really is a deep history down there.
Yeah. I think it just goes back to what the article mentioned, what the professor mentioned, is that, I think you cannot consider this society not morally bankrupt because of the history of what we faced. And if you build a country and you build, your economic superiority on the backs of slaves, and then you come back and say, well, we won't owe y'all jack. You know what I mean? We've given you certain things that you need to be happy with. There's not should. There's a need to be happy with. Then you're not happy with that, and we're going to make sure we keep you down, so we're going to keep beating you over the head with certain things. We're going to come up with new things to make sure that we continue to keep our foot on your necks. Then, there's a certain history that goes along with that where you're like, all right, well, what's the point?
Right.
Like, I mean, seriously, like, what's the point of me voting? What's the point of me doing certain things? Because nothing is ever going to change. And for some individuals, you're not able to put your finger on it. Yeah. You're not. The only thing you can say is, well, they're all the same, or nothing is ever going to change, or this society is always going to be that way. And, maybe our natural reflex is to ask, well, what's your specific example? And some people say, well, I don't really have one. Well, sometimes you don't need one. All you have to do is go by what you see and what's been placed in front of you.
Well, and then to kind of just wrap this up a little bit, a lot of that will change when America as a whole can begin to talk about the effects of slavery. Yeah, because I think that's honestly, the number one point of why we can't get there, because we can't get America to discuss the effects of slavery. As far as most Americans are concerned, and black people too, there's some black people that feel the same way. It was 1800. We in 2014. Move on. But so when we can have that discussion of how slavery affected black people throughout the years and have it as a collective, that I think that will be the changing point of when you can talk about our reparations. But until you can have that conversation, we're blowing smoke in the air. Because that's the beginning. You got to get people to understand that this is just not some event that happened 200 years ago. This is an event that happened 200 years ago that still affects a portion of the population till this day. In 2014, there are people that live today that because of slavery can't move and get away get out of in front of themselves. Right. And we have to have that discussion. And if we can have that discussion, not as black people, because we're ready, but as America, black, white, everybody, that's when we can move to these other conversations and fixing problems. But until we can do that, until John Conyers can get H.R. 40 on the floor to debate about it,
look, I think
we're done.
I think
we're done.
This conversation, man. It's a good intellectual conversation to have. But outside of that, I mean, that's it. I mean, it's what, June now? Yeah. By July, nobody will be talking about this.
Nah, bro.
We'll move on.
Until the next time.
Yeah.
It's been a great conversation, though, so far. You got to
jump out and say something, I don't know, something crazy.
But it'll come up.
Attention. Oh, that again.
Yeah, there it is. I'll be remiss, though. I have to talk about something before we leave. You wrote an article about this the other day, Jason. So everybody knows the president negotiated the release of a prisoner of war for the last 5 years. But as a part of that negotiation, we negotiated to release 5 top Taliban officers. Top Taliban officers. Now, we didn't release them back in Afghanistan, but we released them to Qatar. How you say that? Qatar? Okay.
Qatar, yeah.
Qatar. So we released them back into Qatar. But I was reading some articles today, as the people of Qatar say. They say, well, they're free to, they're free. They can do what they want. so ultimately, they will eventually end get back in Afghanistan within the next few months, I'm sure. But I just don't get it, man. I get bringing the guy home, and that's a victory because he's been a prisoner for 5 years. But 5? I mean, why not 1? Why couldn't you give him 1? 5?
I think you have to view it from a prism. America does this a lot. This isn't the first time they've done this. Now, I'm not Clinton tried to do it with Osama bin Laden. Reagan did it with Iran-Contra. You see, that almost got him in trouble, but he did it with Iran-Contra. They did it when they brought home John McCain when he was a POW. Mm-hmm. Carter did it when he unfroze Iranian assets back in the late 70s. So this isn't the first time that America has, participated in so-called soldier or prisoner exchange. But I feel like it's being magnified. Even my article, I'm like, I don't necessarily, know how I feel about us releasing 5. But on the other side, it's like, come on, man. Don't. America has this thing where we don't negotiate with terrorists. Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. All the
Yes, you
time.
do.
Yes,
All the
yes,
time.
you
All the
do.
time.
Like, don't sit up here in front like you don't.
Again, I'm okay with them. One, give him one. 5 though.
Like it's the 5 that's getting to you, right?
It's the 5 that got me, man. It's like 5.
You know-
that's like if you got a leader, all you need you got 5 henchmen now. You know what I'm saying? Each of those 5 henchmen can go out and control 20 people. You know what I'm
Like,
saying?
I can
Come
maybe
on,
see
man.
2, but 5?
5. That's what I'm trying to say, man. 5.
I don't know. When I saw it, I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess he know what he doing. You know, it's one of them things. You know, you say 5 top Al Qaeda leaders, but who are they really? I mean, they say that, but it's one of them things. But I mean, who are they really? What power would they hold now? They've been locked away. You know, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, you
I
have to
say they
remember.
tried this in 2012 and it broke down, and they tried it again, and this time it worked. So I don't know what type of power they have. I know that they were in Guantanamo. I can guarantee you this: they were ready to get out of Guantanamo.
They were ready to get out of Guantanamo.
They were ready to get out of Guantanamo.
And after being there, I'm sure for a number of years, they're ready to exact some kind of revenge too.
More than likely, they
So,
are probably angry. Well, not probably in it. They are.
I'm sure they are angry. So it's not about what kind of power they hold. One, they're martyrs now. So even though they may have been out of the game, if you will, for a number of years, they're martyrs. You know what I'm saying? They got released. They're free to go. I'm sure they're angry. It's only a matter of time before they rejoin their brothers in Afghanistan. And no, I'm not necessarily saying that within the next year these 5 gentlemen are going to have something organized to attack us per se, but certainly putting them out there, now they're going to live for whoever knows how long they live, 10, 15, 20 years. And so now they're just now a part of that network because we're still fighting the Taliban. That's why we still got 10,000 people over there, because the Taliban is still fighting. So to give them back 5 key players that were part of the system, you know, in the big scheme of things, again, okay, I get it. We got to give something up, but 5, that's my point, man. It's 5.
But think about this. Now think about this.
Hold on. Tell the brothers, tell the Crips somewhere. You gonna release 5 of they former top lieutenants. Let's see if they don't celebrate the idea of 5 of the former top lieutenants are out of jail.
Okay, but check this out. Check this out. Okay, what if before they released them, they stuck the RF chips in them?
RFID.
The RFID chips in them so they can track them.
Oh, you know they already did that. If they was in Guantanamo, they did that. You don't have any rights.
It's like it's so much thing, and not even that. You know, who knows what they gave her? You know, you never know. They might get over there and fall out next week.
Not even that. They could already be dead, to be honest with you. I mean, seriously, like I said, they have no rights in Guantanamo.
None.
They were force feeding them.
Right.
And you know they're gonna put the RFID chip in you once you go to Guantanamo. That's just automatic.
It's like when I saw it, I was like, I just think it's just something to it, just because. And you know, it's easy to say, oh, why the president would do that, but.
Hey,
you know, he didn't just do it. It's like,
his own words. It's a possibility that they're going to go back.
I understand.
And join the Taliban. That's his
He
word.
basically telling y'all they're already back with him. We know.
But I'm saying, but if you had ulterior motives behind it, that's what you're going to say anyway, right? Because you're not going to announce to them, oh, what do you think? We just release them just to release them? You know,
But you know, I think on the other side of that is, I can guarantee his family couldn't care less what we had to do. All they know is that their son is home.
Exactly.
Now,
you're right.
Exactly.
They couldn't care less.
They be like, I don't care if you gave him Hawaii.
Yes, like as long as you got my son back like you promised you would,
Exactly.
then I'm okay with it. But then you start reading some of the backstory on this dude, and it's a little shaky.
Yeah.
It's a little shaky.
It's a little shaky. He wrote to his mom that he's ashamed to be an American. That's easy. That's easy. Because I don't know the whole backstory, but if you go to Rolling Stone and read that story that Michael Hastings, the guy who was potentially killed by the U.S. government in a car wreck, if you go and read that story that he wrote on him, it's fantastic, and it gives you at least a little bit of a backdrop into what made him. Because he left on his own and the Taliban captured him.
That's what I was listening to radio. Somebody said he was walking away from his post.
He was in the middle of the night.
They
He
said
left.
he was tired of being over there anyway.
He didn't believe in the fight anymore. He left on his own. That's how the Taliban got him.
Right.
So it wasn't as if they were out fighting and they came and picked him up. It was, oh, that's an American on the side of the road. We good.
Yeah. So 5. That's my point. There was 5 of them.
Like, man, we could at least get out 2, but 5.
5.
A little bit too far with 5.
That 5 is a little bit too far, bro. That's all I'm saying. Hey, get brothers home. You know,
I can get y'all 2 and some church's chicken or something.
Something, brother.
Like,
something, man.
5.
We 5, man. We America. We America. We should have went to negotiation tables with MK-47s pointing at them.
Like, this is.
But see, that's one of them things. That's why I really think it was
in the middle of the night.
I really just don't think
negotiation
it's just that simple. It is what I just don't think it's just that simple.
It never is.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Look, you'll read about this in a book about 2 to 3 years from now,
Right.
about what really went down and about what really happened. Because I mean, this is a knee jerk for everybody. It's, you know,
Like, you never know. It's like, okay, they released him, got the soldier back, and they agreed to move out this certain province in Afghanistan. They ran them off from over there.
Absolutely.
So they got access to some more oil.
So you're right. You absolutely never know, man. Our hope is that they had those chips in them. They know where they are, and they already sent some drones to go take them out.
Yeah.
But for him to say, yeah, there's a possibility they may do something, or they may rejoin the Taliban. That's him saying, yeah, they back. Yeah, like we already know. They over there swinging on monkey bars right now.
Exactly.
Getting retrained.
And then they released the Taliban released a video today of the whole project going down. I was watching the video, and here's the thing that troubled me about the video. In the video, you could see some of the Taliban members talking to him, but it was more like one of them friendly conversations. Like it's like he was high fiving them at one point.
Like, you've been over here long enough. You're one of us now.
It was real peaceful. It was like they were releasing a brother for ulterior motive or something. I don't know, man. But man, we thank you for listening. We want to thank Professor Armour for calling us and talking to us. Jason, as always, man, we appreciate when you come by.
Thanks for having
We'll
me,
see
man.
you next week. This is your host, J Real, signing off. RealFamilyTalk.com, Facebook, Real Family Talk, Twitter, Real Family Talk. Next week, y'all. You can follow us on Facebook, Real Family Talk. You can follow us on Twitter, Real Family Talk. The website, realfamilytalk.weebly.com.
WOKB, Winter Garden, Orlando.